2026, to the partner series for 2026. And David, thanks for being here. David actually is celebrating a promotion today, got promoted.
Yeah,
it's out there on LinkedIn. Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Well deserved. And I'm excited to have a client, a customer on because, and I think this is a really interesting key learning for folks out there. We were having a sales call and we were kind of talking about our plan for what we wanted to do with these calls in 2026. And one of our team, Brett on our team, kind of mentioned, hey, while we sell a lot of the material, all the materials for the most part that people use for trade shows, we don't execute on a lot of them. And so when we bring on like a partner who is a place we might buy the materials from, they're not always maybe the best either to say, hey, what does it actually take to put on a great trade show? So we rolled the dice and we've had David on the podcast, the Brand Herald podcast, but we've not had a customer on the partner series because that's been more or less exclusively for our actual vendor partners, the ones providing the products. I'm going to be setting David up to tell you all about basically his trade show playbook, strategy, execution, and of course, gear that people want. So, and you can see David is wearing some gear we did for him.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, David, let's get into it here. Tell everybody, just very quickly, those who don't know you or don't know the company, just a very quick background on who you are and Wirecrafters.
Yeah, so I'm David Fishburn. I'm the Director of Marketing at Wirecrafters. We're a nation's leading producer of wire mesh partitions, machine guarding, data center security solutions. As you can kind of see behind me, some of our options. I've been with the company now a little over 10 years, and I lead all of our overall marketing and strategy.
Yeah, and even more now, as of today.
Yeah.
More responsibility. All right, so let's dive right in and start talking about trade shows. You guys do, from my notes, 10 to 12 trade shows. Yeah, that probably varies, but you do a lot of trade shows every year, and that's kind of your responsibility. So first, I was just curious, why trade shows? Maybe talk a little bit about why trade shows are the preferred method for you all to get out there in front of customers.
Yeah, I think like you said, we do 10 to 12 trade shows. Some of those are rather large. We have trade shows that are 50,000 plus attendees, over 1,500 exhibitors, take up almost 1 million square foot in some of these places. Then we all go all the way down to like some very small ones, a couple thousand attendees, very small exhibitors. It just kind of depends on the market that we're going after. But the reason we do trade shows, we've been doing them a long time, well before I started at Wirecrafters. But they're a really important tool for us to get face-to-face with a lot of customers at one time. They can get hands-on with our product because 99% of the time, our entire booth is made out of our wire partition. So we set up different pieces of our wire partition and different applications all throughout our booth and kind of walk them through, tell a story, understand our products and all that.
We just wrapped up some of our industry national trade shows in the last couple of weeks. We went to Orlando to one, and then the biggest one was in Vegas. And one thing I saw that they were talking about was that they just see this movement of trade shows or booths at trade shows becoming more interactive, experiential. And like, that's what's so cool, I think, about the way you all approach it is your material really makes up the booth. That's kind of a unique position that you all are in.
Absolutely, yeah.
Talk a little bit about, this is one thing I wanted you to talk about just briefly, your sales approach. So a lot of people are probably familiar with the fact that, most businesses have a product or service, they sell it to a customer, but sometimes it gets a little murky because it's like, but who's the customer? Like, and in your case, you sell a lot through distribution. Just talk a little bit about that so people frame up who you're kind of going after.
Yeah, so we sell through dealers and distributors nationwide, but at major trade shows, you've got a lot of end users and you've got a lot of our distributors there. So we kind of go about it two different ways. A lot of times, our customers, which we'll call dealers or distributors, come through the booth and they want to know, what's new, what do we have going on, what's different from the last time we saw you. So a lot of that time is spent showing them around new features, new applications, talking through those things, and then also having our outside sales team set up those sales meetings with them at a later date. So it's a good opportunity for them to talk about what's new to the rest of the sales team and not just the one or two people that are at the show. And on the flip side, we've got end users coming through that have problems or solutions or problems or issues that we need to have solutions for. So we get a lot of interesting solutions at trade shows, I feel like. Some people will come up with just a problem they have and we can suggest a solution that's maybe there or it's not. That's why a lot of times we'll have interactive displays tied to our website, something like that we can run them through and show them some other stuff that may or may not be in the booth.
Yeah, no, it's and a lot of times end users being like, in the case of a distribution model, you'll have a distributor in a lot of cases that represents multiple lines. I guess maybe in some cases one line or a few lines, but then they're selling to the customers that are actually putting the product in place. And so those end users then, they're interacting with you, but ultimately they're going to channel their orders through that distributor network.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are, I'm sure, some obvious, and there are obvious like national large trade shows that you're going to do, and it's kind of a non-negotiable. How do you kind of just quickly for the not the large ones, the smaller ones? What does it look like to kind of pick which show? Because you can't do them all. What's it look like to
Right.
pick the shows that you're going to do and not do?
Yeah, so we take a look at a multiple factors when we're looking at a new trade show. Where it's at is a key thing for us. So actually, the location in the U.S. Where's the show at? If we feel like we've got a good representation there, and we could take advantage of that show. Time of the year, obviously, cost is a major factor. A lot of those things kind of go into it. What are the typical attendees? And then obviously the main thing is going to be the target market for the show. So we have a lot of like major material handling shows. That's our major market. Then we get into automation, safety, and manufacturing, a lot of robotics and that kind of stuff where we provide safety around. And then some of our smaller markets that we would, if it's one of those and it's a new show that we've never been to, we'll take a look at it and see if it makes sense for us, for sure.
You guys are selling coast to coast in the U.S. Or do you sell throughout the world as well, or is it primarily U.S. based?
Mostly U.S. based and some Canada and Mexico. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. And and I think I know the answer to this, but you adjust the messaging in the booth for those shows depending on the audience, obviously, because you have multiple, as you mentioned, you've got multiple product lines.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we're a big material handling show like a Modex or a ProMat, something like that are our big industry shows, to be very heavily focused on warehouse and distribution. Then if you get into automate, fab tech, those are automation centered ones. So they'll be around our machine guarding and robotics guarding. Data center world, another option where we provide solutions for inside data centers, very specific to that market.
So the key takeaway for me I'm hearing is just, there's, and probably for most of us, there's going to be like the big shows that make sense that it's sort of like if you're supposed to be there. Mm-hmm. And then as far as the other ones, the smaller, more regional, be selective, be strategic, make sure that it aligns with your audience and who you're trying to reach. Moving on to, so I mentioned to you that even though I'm in this business and we sell a lot to folks who do trade shows like you guys, I haven't been to a lot of them over the years. And so we're just starting to re-engage in that process. And man, I'll tell you, it can be draining. Trade show week it takes it out of everybody, I think, and it's a lot. But obviously the main reason you're there is not, it's not to look cool, to have a cool, it's not just that, it is to get leads. And obviously the things that we do, which we'll get to in a minute, play a role in that. But talk a little bit about, because this was actually something you taught me about, in this modern day and age, what is lead capturing, follow-up systems? What does that look like? You get the booth set up, the bell goes off, people start coming in, they're flowing into the booth. Talk a little bit about how you make sure that you're trying to capture those leads.
Yeah, so we have meetings with our sales staff, whoever's going to be working the booth, and so that everybody's on the same page as far as what we're doing for lead capture. We've got a certain list of questions that we answer within the app once we've scanned somebody, just kind of pre-qualifying them a little bit on the show floor. Then this process has evolved over the years for sure, but post-show, we've got daily emails that kind of go out the day of the shows. It's kind of like a thank you for stopping by the booth, that kind of stuff. And then at the end of the show, all those leads are dispersed amongst our outside sales team. They're tasked with following up the week after the show, pretty much, to get in front of these people while it's still fresh. And then from there, it's just kind of that continuous follow-up, trying to lead them down the path of actually submitting a quote or a contact, whatever we need to do out of it.
So practically speaking, is the software that you use to scan badges, it's provided by the show, right? Like it's something that you guys will log into, because I know they were scanning our badges when we were in Orlando.
Yeah, typically there is. I know some people who do, 20, 30, 40 shows a year might have their own standalone systems that they just typically use. But with the major shows that we do, it's pretty intuitive. So we use typically what's provided with the show.
Got it. Yep. And then so you're scanning that's going in. And then that was another thing I thought was interesting, is then you're taking the people that you've scanned that day and they're getting an email, sort of a recap email from you all at the end of the day, just a little bit, just highlights of what that show day looked like.
Yeah, we kind of personalize those a little bit more, because they're quick touches.
Yeah.
So a picture from the booth that day, so everybody recognizes what we're wearing. We always have coordinated outfits in the booth, so they'll see that quick picture of the booth and a little bit of information about what they could have seen in the booth that day, and then we'll follow up later with them.
I know sometimes the times that we've done it, it can get frenzied. I mean, you go in with your best laid plans, right? Man, everything's like, I got this booth and people are going to come in and we're going to scan them, we're going to answer all the questions. Yep. And then inevitably your people flow in the booth will outstrip sometimes the capacity of people who can talk to them and execute on that. Does that happen to you guys too? I mean, it just gets crazy sometimes and you're not able to capture everything that you'd like to capture.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely times where the booth is overwhelmed and you're trying to bounce around and make sure everybody's taken care of. If they have questions, make sure they have been scanned or they haven't been scanned, if they don't need to be scanned. Sometimes we try not to scan a lot of our current customers if they're dealers. Muddies the waters when it comes to lead organization after the fact.
Yeah.
Sometimes they do want to be scanned if they want a quick follow up afterwards on something new, but just making sure we're scanning the right people and making sure we're not missing stuff is important for sure.
Yeah, so that, obviously I think the key takeaway here is just we all know to stay focused on the objective, that the reason you're at a trade show is to capture leads and make sure that you've thought ahead, you've interacted with your sales team, as you mentioned, ahead of time, know who's going to be there, that you've made sure they understand how we're going to go about capturing those leads, and in an ideal situation, what they need to be doing to do that, so that we have something to act on after the fact.
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit about mistakes to avoid, lessons learned. Like what's something you've learned along the way that you'd warn kind of a newer exhibitor about that comes to mind?
I would say always get the extra padding under the carpet in your booth. I mean, when you're
I
on
like
your feet,
that.
when you're on your feet
Yeah.
8 to 9 hours a day on that concrete floor, it's tough. So we always spring for the extra padding under the carpet. It's very crucial at the end of the day.
I would not have seen that coming. When I asked that question, that was not.
Yeah.
This proves that I don't do this ahead of time where I know what he's going to say. I did not see that coming.
Yes, it's definitely something that we do. Another one, just take advantage of a lot of times trade show service providers like the Freemans and those people of the world who provide all your stuff at the show. There's always pre-show discounts at a certain time well in advance. That stuff can get really, really expensive as it gets close to the show. So a part of that planning process, get that stuff in early, whether you need electrical, you need certain tables and chairs and all that stuff in there. Get that stuff in earlier the better.
Man, that's good. I like it. And that is definitely things that I think if you didn't do shows for a long time, you wouldn't know those things. I feel like this could be categorized in the bucket of dumb questions, but have you ever invested in a show or setup that didn't quite deliver? Have you ever done a show where you're like, man, that did not pan out?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had some over the years for sure. I did one a couple years ago, smaller show in a city, and we've done multiples of that style show in other cities across the U.S. This one just didn't pan out for me. Traffic was awful. Thankfully it was only a 1-day show, but it just didn't work out very well. So we've not been back to that one.
Yeah, and so it's just kind of like at the end of the day, it just didn't generate the leads that you needed it to at the end. Yeah.
Yep.
So
weren't enough people there to really generate the leads, and so it just didn't turn out. I don't know what the issue was that year, but it wasn't good enough for us to continue coming back.
Yeah, and it's expensive. I mean, I think that's the thing people forget. Doing shows is really expensive. I mean, because it's the cost of the show booth. Hey, matter of fact, I'll let you run it down. I mean, what are the buckets that people need to be planning for? Where are your cost centers to do a show?
Oh, I mean, the bulk of your money is definitely going to be in the trade show space itself, especially for us. As you get in some of these larger shows and you've got 800 to 1,000 or plus square foot booths, there's some massive ones out there. We are not a massive booth, but we typically land in that 600 to 900 range square footage wise. And when you're talking, some shows are,
which really quick, I just want to contextualize that for people. The typical like sort of normal like 10 by 10 booths, 100 square feet. So you're talking about your footprint is about 8 to 9 of those if you're out there and you've been to a normal like booth where you see a bunch of 10 by 10s.
Some of our big shows coming up, we've got 20 by 40s, 30 by 30s, that kind of stuff that we've done in the past. So, but if you're talking $30-$40 a square foot just to rent the space in the hall, that's just giving you a concrete square. That's a lot of money just to start out with.
And like you're saying, doesn't include your padding to be comfortable. Nope. Doesn't include your electric, any paraphernalia or tables, chair. I mean, I assume all that kind of stuff.
Padding, all your materials, everything that you then put in your booth. Some of these booths are massive, huge booths out there. We manufacture our own stuff and then ship it. Shipping's a huge cost of material handling, moving the stuff around with.
Well, then you got to pay them to receive it and deliver it to your spot, right? Obviously, you have to build it. So, I mean, I think the thing I would say is not trying to scare people off, but it's also important to remember that, like, you got, and I'm sure, honestly, the day and age we're in, you could probably get a fantastic checklist from ChatGPT or the like, but you basically go, hey, what are the areas where I'm going to need to plan for costs? Because that also doesn't include your people costs. You're going to have to pay to get people there in terms of travel, feed them, take care of them while they're there. So, obviously, it's a cost of doing business, and the point with all of it is just to make sure that you're doing your homework, you understand the full cost of it, and that you have some idea what you need to see out of it to make it make sense.
Right, yeah. With all that expense you're putting into it, you definitely need to make sure you are getting a return on it.
Yeah.
It's very important.
So we talked a little bit about the lead capturing systems. Let's talk a little bit about like what works in terms of generating quality leads. So, and we're getting close to having that conversation about merch. So what's something that really has worked to bring the right kind of leads to the booth? Something that you all did that was creative, that brought in that traffic.
Yeah. So we sit down well in advance every year for our major shows. Something that I think we do a really good job of, and a lot of our customers tell us we do a really good job of, is that pre-show marketing on the social side and email and all that. For our big shows, the Modexes and ProMats of the world, we spend probably 60 to 90 days ahead of time. We start promoting that in our social. We've had a lot of fun over the years with our booth number in general. And so we plaster it all
I
over
do
the
remember seeing
place.
some of that stuff on
Yeah.
social. Yeah.
Yeah. So we always push that booth number pretty heavy so that when our customers who are coming to the show, they know when they walk in the door, they're heading to B15507 at Modex in Atlanta this year. They know exactly where they're heading immediately. And when they come to our booth, they always tell us, hey, we knew where we were supposed to go. Tying that into like the lead gen, I think just having that presence out there. We've got a good marketing strategy, I think, for the pre-show. Doing a little more on the end user side, that's a little different, but we do a ton of that stuff on social, trying to promote it before the show even happens.
Yeah, so you're sort of chumming the waters a little bit, making sure people know where you're going to be exactly, not just what shows you're going to be at, but specifically where you'll be when they get in there, so that they can be planning ahead, that they know they're going to come see it. Do you guys get into doing, again, I know that a lot of people these days get into doing fun sort of games or different things inside the booth, or do you kind of keep pretty kind of above board or straightforward, like where it's just like, hey, we're there to talk to you about trying to help you solve problems, or do you get into some of that too?
We've done some of that stuff over the years. Lately, we've really been focused on the product and pushing, the importance of our product. Sometimes when you do some of the gimmicky stuff and you get people coming to do something to win this or that, it can kind of muddy the waters with your leads, and you get a lot of people who aren't really interested, but they were interested in the giveaway.
Yep.
So we kind of stay away from that a little bit. In addition to the pre-show stuff I was talking about, we do a lot of teasing what's going to be in the booth. Try not to give away everything. This year we've got a new product improvement that we're going to be launching. So a lot of that teaser stuff will be coming up soon here on social for us.
I think that's an interesting point too, because it's like, again, this is to me where it's so important in this and really anything that you do. Don't lose sight of your objective. So, it's not just about, like, it's cool if you've got a full booth, but if it doesn't translate to leads, then, what was the point? I remember all those years ago, there was I think it was that famous Coca-Cola commercial with Mean Joe Green that we all remember. It's like it won awards and like the public remembered it. But the irony of it was, I think Coca-Cola pulled it because it didn't sell Coke. And at the end of the day, Coke did not lose sight of the fact that, like, hey, we created this commercial with Mean Joe Green for those young people out there. He played in the NFL. But it didn't move the needle. And at the end of the day, if it didn't sell Coke, they weren't running it. So I think that's the point. It's like, hey, you can do cool things to get people in the booth, and that's great. And you may look super busy, but if you're not generating quality leads, the booth couple doors down could look less busy, but generate more business. And that's not what we're about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Let's transition to, so, again, in summary for everybody listening, like it's, we've talked about that. Sometimes it's obvious what shows you should be doing. Sometimes it's not. Make sure that you're thinking through that from a strategic standpoint. You got to, and again, it always goes back to basics, knowing who my ideal customer profile or profiles are, where are they going to be, can I reach them at these shows? So deciding on what you're going to do. Then obviously you have to design your booth. That's everything from as substantial a booth as what these guys are doing, that's 900 square feet that they manufacture, to things like what we do, like backdrops, table covers, retractable banners that are pretty easy to spin up and send around. And then obviously you're getting in there and making connections, generating leads, capturing those leads. But while you're there, you got to look great. And so let's talk about the role of branded merch. I know that we've worked together for a number of years. We've had some hiccups along the way. So I always say, if you listen to this stuff, but we've fixed it. But at the end of the day, I know you guys at these things, it can be hard to stand out, and you want to look uniform. You want to look like a team. So just talk a little bit about the role that you see branded clothing and promotional items playing in the midst of everything we've been talking about to this point.
Yeah, I think it's really important. Our colors are kind of red and black and white. So as you can see, the shirt I'm wearing, this was one of our big shirts for last year. We made a statement on the first day of the show. Everybody was wearing these shirts. It went over really well. Everybody loved them. They commented on everything that came through. They want to know where they could get them. So that's been really good. And then also, I think one year it fell on St. Patrick's Day for one of the days of the show. So we went green shirts with our logo on it, which is not one of our colors, but it played into the holiday. A lot of other people were doing it too, but I think we pulled off a really nice looking booth that day. Yeah, so I work with Landon right after the first of the year typically.
We're working on it right now.
Yeah, we put together a plan for our trade show apparel for the entire year. So I order enough clothing for all of our outside sales team, anybody who's going to be attending any of our trade shows throughout the year, and kind of put together multiple choices that we can use on different days of different shows. So it's definitely a very important part of our plan that we put a lot of effort and money into, really.
I was pulling up over here on the other screen. We've got this section of our website at goodsonsupplyco.com, says our work. I actually don't think I have a case study. We have one for another customer, but I don't think I've created one for you guys and like a picture of your team at the show. So we're gonna have to kind of remedy that this year.
Yeah,
But
we can take care of that for sure.
it is always interesting to me though when I see these pictures and I go, man, you got an 900 square foot booth with custom, fixtures and everything, and then you got this team that's outfitted and they all look the same and they look uniform, they look like a team. When I'm at shows, that catches my attention because,
Yeah.
and I think part of it is like there's like this subconscious, like, man, they really are paying attention to all the details. They're making sure that the thing is tight from top to bottom. I'm putting you on the spot a little bit with. That's the clothing side. You got the giveaway side. Has there been any giveaways that have kind of sparked interest? Sometimes everybody. We have a customer that just did a home show, I think last weekend or the weekend before, and we had done these pins that they were kind of these cutesy pins. Made sense for a show because it was something that next thing you know, people are like, hey, where'd you get that pin? How do I get that pin? And again, this could slip down the slope of, hey, I gave away a bunch of pins to a bunch of people who aren't my customers, and that's not what we're about. But has there been any giveaways that, people seem to kind of like, man, they got to the booth and they're like, how do I get one of these things?
Yeah, I mean, we've done a number of things over the years. You mentioned pins. Pins are always good. People love them. We pick pretty good pins, I think. But pins and notepads, in thinking about our market specifically.
Practical things, right?
Yeah, very practical things. We try not to get the useless junk that somebody's just going to throw away or give it to their kid, that kind of stuff. Pins and notepads in our market specifically, because you're talking to guys who are out in a warehouse, estimator, sales guy, that kind of stuff, who need to sometimes draw a little quick drawing with dimensions, that kind of stuff. So we've done the little notepads with graph paper in them, things like that are just very practical and useful for our customers who will use them and pull them out of their backpack on a daily basis, even when they're at a, not quoting a Wirecrafters project, but they could be somewhere else quoting something else, and they'll use that Wirecrafters notebook to look at it. So
one other thing I wanted to ask about, and you actually your longtime president, Milt, just retired. You guys had done the videos Mondays with Milt for a long time, but the reason he came to mind was I remember, and this is somewhat out of order of our conversation here, but I think it's important. You guys do a lot. You did the Mondays with Milt videos. People got to feel like they knew Milt. Obviously, he'd been around there for a long time, but they were seeing him in these kind of fun videos every Monday morning. And you were saying that became powerful because not only would people, they're coming to the Wirecrafters booth to see things that will help them solve problems, but they got to the point where they really felt like they knew you guys personally. Talk a little bit, because that was very deliberate.
Yeah, Milt was a huge personality. I mean, he still is a huge personality. Even he just retired at the end of December. You would have people come into your booth looking specifically for Milt. He's a tall guy, 6'6", so he has some presence. I've been around the industry for 45 years, so a lot of people know him. And yeah, through those videos, we've created even bigger audience. A lot of people that we never really did work with, but they knew Milt from seeing him at shows or seeing him online. So that personal relationship, we're very heavy on the relationship-based selling here at Wirecrafters. So creating those relationships with all of our customers has been huge.
I think one real big, takeaway that I've got as we wind down here, we've got a couple of minutes left. It's, there's a lot of work. There's the practical side. Hey, what shows are we going to do? What's our booth going to look like? What are we going to talk about? What are we going to show? How are we going to capture leads? All of which is insanely important. But beyond that, there's, to me, kind of the softer side, the marketing side, which is how do we, well ahead of this, through deliberate effort, help people get to know our group as individuals, as people? How do we make sure that people know what shows we're going to be at and specifically where we're going to be, make it to where they're almost waking up saying our booth number, and so in other words, there's a lot of seed planting on both those sides that happens too. And if you do that well, then you drastically increase your chances that these shows are going to be successful. And I feel like that's definitely what I see from your strategy here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You nailed it.
What, as we kind of wrap up, and I know you kind of talked about some of the things specifically about someone doing a booth for the first time, but what's a piece of advice that you have for someone out there planning their next trade show? The thing that keeps coming to mind for me is just the movement of technology and just what people's expectations are when they come to trade shows. So as people are getting ready to do their own trade shows, is there something that just comes to mind as a parting shot that you'd give to them?
Yeah, I think that pre and post show strategy that we've talked about a little bit is super important. Again, our pre and post show strategy has evolved quite a bit over the years, and it's continuing to evolve. We'll continue to do more and more pre-show around our booth numbers, teasing the products, making sure people understand what they can see when they are at our booth and who's going to be there, personal aspect. And then that post-show, just making sure you're touching them at the right time shortly after the show so it's still fresh, and then continuing to send those touch points out and until you get the quote that you're looking for or whatever you're trying to sell. Get them. Kind
Yeah.
of get them hooked.
Well, man, I appreciate you being here. I'll tell you, it's funny as like we're right up against 30 minutes. I was like, man, we have definitely been a rock skip across the pond here, and you could talk for hours as you go in
Yeah.
depth on each of these things. I think in summary, we talked a little bit about just why trade shows. Talked a little bit about why to choose certain trade shows over the others. Making sure that you stay focused on your objective and that you're going to reach the audience that you want to reach. How you go about capturing the leads, mistakes to avoid, like hey, make sure you get that extra padding in the booth.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about what works in terms of generating leads, and obviously the role of merch, and kind of just wrapping up with what I think is probably the most important takeaway of this conversation, which is the pre and post show planning, and that if you don't do that well, it can lead to the efforts that you put into the show itself just not getting out of it what you ultimately want to get out of it.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I think it's safe to say that trade shows are very much alive. I mean, they seem to be, even with all the technology that I mentioned, they definitely are a critical part of industry. There's still people getting out there and connecting with their customers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, David, thanks for being here. I want their website, wirecrafters.com. You can check out all that they have going on. And then if you want it, David, tell them a little bit about how they could connect with you if they'd like to do that.
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, David Fishburn, Director of Marketing, Wirecrafters. Again, we do a ton of stuff on LinkedIn and social in general from the Wirecrafters perspective, a lot for myself as well on the trying to do a little more on the marketing, leadership, thought leadership, that kind of stuff. You'll see more of that come from me soon. So.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for being here.